So what is going on, guys? I am Black Ops Amazing. Welcome back to another video on the channel where today we're going to be taking a look at two different times that TREYARCH fooled us within zombies, or perhaps two times that we fooled ourselves. And what I'm talking about are the houses. The house of NIKOLAI Belensky that we see in the Memories trailer, and the house of Dr. MONTY'S that we believed we saw before it was even revealed to us in Revelations, all the way back in October, November time when BO3 released, almost a year before it was officially shown to us. So starting off with that one, Dr. MONTY'S house. Upon Black Ops 3's release, we didn't really know anything about Dr. MONTY. We saw his scarf in the game before Origins. In the ending cutscene for Origins, we saw the two children, Samantha and Eddie, in his house, but at that time we didn't know that was his. And then when BO3 released, of course we had Monty's Gobblegum machine and a few other hints here and there, but we didn't know who Dr. MONTY was. We didn't know what his house looked like in zombies. However, in one of BO3's multiplayer maps called Infection, as you're just wandering about through the map, you will notice some very strange things going on. The wall is the floor, things are warped. Outside of the map you see floating rocks everywhere. If you've played the campaign, you will know it's based off the mission Demon Within, which takes place in a simulation of the Battle of Bastogne. But as I was saying, as you just wander about, you will see outside of the map there is a house floating on a rock. And if you also played the first Zombies map, Shadows of Evil, there were pieces of scrap paper that you could find, and when you put them together you would get this, a roadmap, although we didn't know it at the time, of future Zombies maps. So we have coordinates up the top left, right, and bottom left and right, which I believe were for Horizon Draka, Zetsubonoshima, Gorod Karovi, and the Giant, if I'm not wrong. These coordinates take you to the locations of those maps, Stalingrad, Pompeii, etc. But you will notice something that looks very familiar to what I've just shown you in the Infection multiplayer map, and that is this house floating on this rock with some writing next to it that says the children will be safe in the house. It also mentioned how 115 was the fabric that was holding everything together, which we learned later on in Tag der Toten, how the war is in the infinity. This was based around the cycle, but putting everything that we had together, the Origins intro cutscene showing the two children in the house, then this scrap piece of paper on the map after, Shadows of Evil, showing a house and some writing that said the children will be safe in the house, and then in the Infection map for MP, which is supposed to be a warped simulation, we see a similar looking house. Now if you compare the two, they're not identical. The roof is slightly different, the shape is slightly different, but how much of a coincidence is it to have these two houses of similar size floating on a rock? There must be like a 1 in a trillion chance of this being two totally different scenarios, but I believe that's what TREYARCH wanted us to think, because we now go to what Dr. MONTY'S house actually looks like. We can see that in the Revelations intro, and I would say it more closely resembles what we saw in the scrap paper. However, again, it's still not exact. The shape of it doesn't match up. In the intro cutscene, Monty's house also isn't floating on rocks, but once the Shadow Man opens up the gateway to allow the Apothicans to enter Argotha, then this area that Monty's house is on becomes like this. But still, it's weird that Monty's house in real life or in the game and on this scrap piece of paper don't really look the same, when they should do, because this is a drawing of Dr. MONTY'S house. Since all of this was written and drawn by Richtofen, there could be the explanation that he didn't know exactly what Monty's house looked like, so this was a guess or just a rough idea. Maybe he saw it for a second previous to him writing this note. We obtained this scrap piece of paper in Shadows, and what we know about the zombie storyline is Richtofen did go to Dr. MONTY'S house prior to deliver his soul to Dr. MONTY. He would have had to have gone there, otherwise he wouldn't have known about all of this information we see on the scrap piece of paper. So we definitely know Richtofen went inside of Dr. MONTY'S house before this, because he has a teleporter in there. Whether he went outside of the house, I don't know, and that's maybe the reason why it doesn't look identical to what it does in real life, because Richtofen never actually saw the outside. And so perhaps the one that we see in the MP map wasn't supposed to be Dr. MONTY'S, but that's what TREYARCH wanted us to think it was. Zombies is connected to multiplayer, so that's not an issue, but looking at it, this is obviously some random house. However, at the time, because we didn't know what Monty's house looked like, TREYARCH fooled us into thinking, wait, we were seeing Dr. MONTY'S house in the Infection MP map. It's a strange coincidence that the two end up in a very similar situation. In Revelations, everything gets broken apart pretty much like this. You could say then this was a bit of foreshadowing as to what was to come in Zombies. Maybe, but TREYARCH definitely knew what they were doing with this. They knew the thoughts that this would start in the zombies community. And then the second house which I want to talk about is NIKOLAI's. Now, in the memories trailers that we had for all of our premise characters, Richtof and Takio, Nikolai and Dempsey, in the background of NIKOLAI's, you will notice he is sitting in a house. You see just a few different things behind him, a gramophone, a piano, and well, in the campaign on the mission Demon Within, which is the exact same map that Infection is based off, you find this very same house. You actually go in it, and all of those things that were behind Nikolai in his memories trailer can be found here.
Sarah, why do you think you're here? What's so significant about this battle? Why do you dream about it?
I played the details over and over in my mind. I knew I wasn't strong enough to fight this battle. I knew I wasn't brave enough. When I wrote that paper, I hadn't even seen real combat yet. I had read first-hand accounts of what they went through, but I couldn't imagine how they did it, how they held on.
Sometimes you have to hold on.
Sometimes you have to. This is the path I must take. The path we both must take.
So we found the house that Nikolai was in the campaign. Questions then started to arise. Was this actually Nikolai's house? Is this where he lived? Remember that this campaign takes place in Belgium. During the siege of Bastogne, Nikolai is Russian, but that's not to say he didn't live in Belgium, so you can't really rule that one out. Maybe we can get more answers from knowing what this mission Demon Within entails. This is the nightmare world taking place inside of Sarah Hall's head that we access by interfacing with her DNI. Just like the MP map, at certain points it is upside down. This is still a simulation, but that doesn't really help us. Was this Nikolai's house? Now, more than likely, I'm going to say the answer was TREYARCH just found a random house from the campaign and placed Nikolai in it as the background. But if we're just talking from a zombies point of view, TREYARCH probably wanted us to think this was his house, because all of the backgrounds of the character memories trailers relate to them. So Richtofen is in The Giant, which we know is where he started his story, or Doris. Takio is in Japan. We see the cherry blossoms behind him. Dempsey sees his Ultimus Self's ghost, and Nikolai is in this house, and whilst he's here, he talks about all of the battles and wars that he's fought, but he's only ever lost one.
For so long we have been fighting. Many battles, many wars. I lost only one. We have seen impossible things, cheated death countless times.
And that's when we see the house in the background. The speculation was he referring to his family? He also talks about a higher power, which we know is Dr. Monty, but at the time we didn't. So the big question, was this Nikolai's house? I think the very likely answer is no, in terms of us seeing it in the campaign, but when we see it in the memories trailer, perhaps. And that's what TREYARCH wanted us to think. So two houses that we saw both in BO3 Zombies that were outside of the zombies mode. One in the campaign being Nikolai's house, and in the multiplayer map, Infection, we saw Dr. Monty's house. So there we go. Definitely a cool time in zombies. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, hopefully you've enjoyed the video for today. If you have, drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.